Welcome back to Best Pod Available. Joe DeLeone and Ryan Roberts here to give you our next rankings episode. We are doing running backs today for your fantasy football folks out there looking for some insight on which guys you should pay attention to. There's not very many. This running back class is not very good. We're just going to cut through it. This running back class is not good. After we get past maybe number 7, it starts to thin out quite a bit. We're going to unpack all of that on today's show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and go back and watch all of our other position ranking shows that we've done so far. We're blowing through these. The draft is, it's disturbingly close, so make sure you don't.
It's 3 weeks away, man.
Out.
It's 3 weeks away.
Dude,
literally 3 weeks.
Insane. I've got a lot more players I still got to watch. It is going to be a long Saturday for me. I'm going to see how many I can get through. Let's read off our top 10s. At number 10 for me, I've got Nick Singleton from Penn State. Number 9, Seth McGowan from Kentucky. Number 8, Kalen Black from Indiana. Number 7, Deontae Clayborn from Wake Forest. Number 6, Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M. Number 5, Jonah Coleman from Washington. Number 4, Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. 3, Jadarian Price from Notre Dame. 2, Mike Washington from Arkansas. And number 1, of course, Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame. Can I say this,
yes,
by the way, just before you?
Sure.
We've talked so much about Jeremiyah Love on this channel because we love Jeremiyah Love, and we've talked about every little detail with him.
Yeah.
I almost think that we should keep him really short because we have oversaturated our listeners with Jeremiyah Love discourse. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
I think that we don't need to go deep on him.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but also in a class that we don't love, it seems a little bit hypocritical is not the right word, but it feels ill-advised not to talk about the actual good player in this class.
We're gonna talk about him,
Right.
but the point is that we've published 8 videos on Jeremiyah Love,
That's a good point,
and it gets to a certain point where we're just beating people over the head with it. All right, your top 10.
Yes. Number 10 for me is Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M. Very controversial player, I would say, for a couple different reasons. Kalen Black, running back out of Indiana at number 9. Number 8, Seth McGowan, running back out of Kentucky, formerly of New Mexico State and Oklahoma. Nick Singleton, running back for Penn State at number 7. Number 6 is Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. 5, Wake Forest, Deontae Clayborn. Jadarian Price at number 4 from Notre Dame. Number 3 is Mike Washington, the interesting running back out of Arkansas. 2, Jonah Coleman from Washington. And number 1, as we already talked about, Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame.
All right, I've got the first guy that I want to get to here. I want to talk about Lev Moss. I want to get to McGowan, and I want to get to Singleton to start here. Mm-hmm. Lev Moss, I think you and I are on the same page. I'm kind of just saying F it in the regard of Lev Moss has a brutal injury history, has not completed a full season. It makes his projection from an evaluator team perspective difficult. I wouldn't be shocked if Le'Veon Moss goes undrafted. Being a physical runner like he is going to make him a really tough sell for a front office to draft him. Especially the easiest example you can look at, Jonathan Brooks, who has barely played for the Panthers. Nobody wants to invest a pick in a guy that isn't going to contribute, especially at running back. That being said, though, he has some of the best traits out of any running back in this class. Mm-hmm. He is a very physical runner. He's got great contact balance. He's got awesome juice out of his cuts. He picks up a lot of speed. I think that he is a tough dude to tackle. In a vacuum, without even paying attention to the injuries, he is someone who I could see going on to become a 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL. If he finds a way to stay healthy, which I find implausible at a position like running back, if he manages to stay healthy, he becomes a really good running back in the NFL and one that we could be talking about in 5 years saying, man, Lev Moss was great value for the 5th, the 6th round, wherever he ends up going. But sadly, we have to bring all those things into the picture.
Yeah, it's a similar conversation, not to the high level, but it is similar to the Jordan Tyson discourse of the medicals might not be as bad as maybe people would think, but the availability is still the availability. And I believe when we were texting about it, Joe, I think, what was it, Le'Veon Moss has missed 21 games, 22 games during his career, right? So he's missed, I think the most games he's played in a season is 9. So he's missed time each and every season over the last 4, which is obviously very troubling for the running back position that is a high toll position just in general. Because I actually think that we see the player very similarly. Like, in a vacuum, this would be my guy that is the day 3 running back you want, that's going to have more impact than you would think early on in his NFL career, because he actually had some late day 2, early day 3 feedback going into the year from scouts. Like, there were like 3rd to 4th round grades out there on Le'Veon Moss. But at the end of the day, man, dependability matters, especially for a guy that's probably just going to be a rotational or depth piece at the running back position. And if you are unavailable, especially for a player that's going to probably be playing a lot of special teams and you need those guys to be consistently available, you are you're banking on someone that there's an unknown to the oomph degree on a player like a Le'Veon Moss. So that's why he fell down for me, just because although I don't think that his medicals are like this disaster class that we might expect with the time he's missed. 22 games or 21 games missed is 21 games or 22 games missed. Like, it just is what it is, right? Like, that durability and that availability is really troubling. The positive, though, is that it's kind of funny. Like, he was listed between like 208 and 210 during his Texas A&M career. He looks so much bigger to me on film. Like, I thought he would be like 220 plus just watching him, dude. He runs
seriously
so hard. Like, he has kind of that Chris Carson
maybe he needs
vibe.
to add weight. Maybe that's a bit for his health. I don't know. I'm just purely but and he's already big, so imagine how much more sturdy he could be if he was a little bit thicker. I don't know. I'm just
he actually
here. I'm not a physical trainer or anything.
Right. Well, and I didn't think that he had great home run speed on film, but I thought he had good explosiveness, and apparently he does have like a pretty good track background where. So, like, there might just be some unlocking of a little bit more long speed than maybe we anticipate. But he does give me kind of Chris Carson vibes, where, like, he's a very straight line, explosive runner that runs so hard, man. Like, he breaks a ton of tackles. He is a headache when working from the 2nd to 3rd level. There's a lot to love about Le'Veon Moss, but to your point, it's just, can you depend on him? Because, honestly, that dependability and availability is going to determine whether he makes a roster and whether he carves out a role in the NFL for a conceivable amount of time.
Seth McGowan from Kentucky is a guy who's got a interesting background, having been arrested. I'll let you provide that context, but just him as a player, I think that he fits nicely where we both have him here at the back end of our top 10s. There's very, very limited options after we start to look in that 8 to 12, 13 range. You're really not going to find very many guys that I think are going to do much more than be secondary running backs or fringe roster players. McGowan, though, despite not having great change of direction ability, he was somebody who, I wrote this in my notes, cooked if he's strung out laterally. If you kind of start to ride him out laterally, he's just going to end up being dropped for a loss or for no gain.
Right.
But he is pretty explosive. He does pick up speed really well. He tested pretty well. He has, for a 223-pound frame, some pretty good just overall athleticism. I think that this is a guy who could be your spellback that comes onto the field, that is able to take some touches on early downs, is able to grind out short yardage. I see a world where Seth McGowan sticks with the team. I like what he brings to the table. I do wonder how much the stuff with his past gets brought up. I feel as though
it's a talking point.
He's in a strong position, having been spending time in jail. I feel like he's on a better path right now, but we don't have the context or the knowledge of him personally to be able to speak on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so you guys can do your research in terms of, his pass from Oklahoma to legality issues to JUCO to New Mexico State to Kentucky. It has been a crazy journey. All I'll say about that, Joe, is I do think it's a pleasant sign that he was available to participate in all-star events, right? So, like, I usually those types of players that have like these really troubling legal backgrounds, if they're not comfortable with it, they just won't allow them to come and participate in these events. So I think that's positive in terms of like him hopefully being on the mend on the other side of past issues, obviously, right? So that's the first conversation point, though, with teams, is they're going to sit down and just try to see if they're comfortable with the person and see if it is all in the past. And if it is, there are some very redeemable qualities to him as a player in terms of he is very well built, 220 plus pounds. He's explosive and he gets up to that top speed in a hurry, and he's got long speed. His running style, though, is just so trying to think of the best word for it. It's like herky-jerky. It's chaotic. Like his legs are kind of going
all... smooth. It's not very smooth.
It's not smooth at all, man. Like his legs are just kind of going all over the place. So he's a very one-cut-and-go runner. Like I don't want him having to put together multiple moves, working to the second level, being a creative runner in space. Like that's just not his bag. He's going to be a guy that is going to be a one-cut-and-go system, can get to his top speed in a hurry, and if he's able to find a crease, he has a lot of explosiveness and speed to be able to create some chunk plays. Interesting note, and I know we texted about this a little bit, and I know we've talked about it in the past as well, but him and Mike Washington were actually on the same New Mexico State team in 2024, which is just kind of an interesting
nuts.
Verge. I don't know what the word is. Like what's crossing of the paths. I don't know what word I was looking for there, but it's just kind of a weird detail in this process that just kind of crossover is a good one. Yeah, that would have been much easier than whatever the hell I just said. But yes, they were in the same place, and he's taking a very unlikely road to where he is now. But there's redeemable qualities, and he's also a bigger back, so I think there's some special teams value potentially on day 3 that can buy him a little bit of time. But ultimately, yes, like you said, it's a full process, comfortable with the person, comfortable with the pass, and what upside you think he has as a football player. There's certainly, again, some athletic qualities to work with, but he is I think he's a very one-scheme runner. Like, he needs to play in that like wide zone system where it's going to ask you one cut and go. Maybe a power system could fit him as well in terms of just getting downhill in a hurry, but I don't think this is like an inside zone heavy team player where he's going to be able to be super creative working from the first, the second to the third level. I do think he's a little bit scheme-specific in that regard.
Yeah. To quickly touch on Nick Singleton before we dig into guys close to the top 5.
Yeah.
Singleton, I'm not bought into Nick Singleton. I don't really have any reason to believe that Nick Singleton's going to work in the NFL.
Right.
I think that he's got a similar-esque profile in the regard of having a lot of juice. He's got a lot more pickup than Seth McGowan has. I think that he is a very, very explosive player. But, Ryan, I don't think enough people talk about the fact that it's kind of useless if you have poor instincts, you have great acceleration, and you don't have good change of direction. Because what you end up happening with a guy like Nick Singleton is that he goes nowhere.
Right.
He doesn't have a good feel. When you're picking up too much speed, but you can't process quickly enough to find lanes while you're picking up big gains, you're just a home run threat, an occasional home run threat. I feel like that is incredibly limited for what you can get out of him.
Sure.
To me, this is a guy who is a third running back on a team. Maybe a team sees a specific role for him and they carve out a role as a limited touch player, as an RB2. But I don't have much faith that Nick Singleton's going to work very well in the NFL.
So I'm out on the upside of Nick Singleton that we once talked about, him being a 220 plus pound athlete that probably would have ran, if not for the foot injury, like 4.38. Like he probably would have ran somewhere around that because he's a really explosive dude with great long speed. Joe, I am out on the ceiling of Nick Singleton, but I'm fine with what the floor is because I actually think he has a better floor than maybe some people think, and maybe even you do. Because I look at him and I say he's a bigger back with speed, and he is a kick-ass pass protector, right? So that buys you time, and he's good in the passing game in general. So I do think that there's a world where he is just a pretty good change of pace, third down type back, like a satellite back, even though he's in a bigger body. I think he could do that stuff. I don't think he'll ever be a running back one in a room. I don't think he'll ever be that type of player because I agree with you. His vision sucks. Let's call it what it is. His vision is really poor and it's really bad. But I think as a second, third running back in a room, pass catching, pass protecting, I think there's still a spot for Nick Singleton. He's just not the prospect that most people thought he was going to be, but he's still a useful player in the right role. His role is just not what people thought it was going to be once upon a time, if that makes sense.
I always hate when you do this. You constantly do this, and it absolutely, unbelievably pisses me off when I have a player that I really, really like, and then you come in here and you're higher on him than I am, and DeLeone Clayborn. I thought that I was irrationally high on DeLeone Clayborn, that I had him at RB7, and your ass comes over here and puts him at RB5.
Crazy,
and
dude. That's crazy.
You did this with Caleb Proctor. You did this with somebody else, but I'm forgetting who it was. My thing with DeLeone Clayborn, though, we got to address the one clear, big, massive issue with him, which is the fact that he's got a fumbling problem. When you are this speedy, explosive, high-juice player, it is a problem that you can't hang on to the football, especially when you're on the lighter side. But here's the big thing with Deontae Clayborn is that he has a role in the NFL, which is being a really high-end RB2 potentially, being somebody that is just going to completely gash and kill you in space and that is going to be able to produce some massive chunk plays. And I also love the upside that he potentially presents as a receiver. There's just a lot that you can get out of a guy like this that's on the lighter side but has juice for days.
Yeah, he's also only 188 pounds, so there's going to be some limitations in terms of him carrying a load for a running back room. Like, he's just not going to be that guy. But I'll tell you two players that I think there's parallels to, Joe, that I think is a high-end comp and it's a low-end comp for him, okay? The low-end comp is Matt Breida, right? Matt Breida was a guy that was a good number 2, really good speed back, has that ability to create chunk plays and to create explosives, but he was just never big enough and never physical enough to be a true running back 1 in the room. The high-end comp, if healthy, is Raheem Mostert. And Raheem Mostert was the same guy coming out of Purdue and early on in his career where he had some fumbling issues. He was not a big back, so his durability was not always great. But he was, when healthy, a dangerous weapon for like 4 or 5 years in the NFL, especially obviously with his time with the San Francisco 49ers. So there is a world where a player like a Deontae Clayborn can work. We just don't have a ton of examples of guys being about 190 to 195 pounds of being legitimate high-end players in the NFL at the running back position, but I do think of a low-end Matt Breida, high-end Raheem Mostert. I do think there's a world where definitely a guy like Deontae Clayborn ends up being a high-end running back 2 in a room.
Yeah, I think that those are great comparisons. And I think that shows a very easy path, especially in the modern NFL, where a guy like that carves out a role. Both of those guys had really good careers, and I think that Claiborne deserves a lot more respect in the scope and the environment of running backs in this class. I don't know why he doesn't get enough recognition. Is it just naturally a lot of people see the fumbles and they just automatically assume that this is going to be a guy that's going to struggle? Is that what this is?
I think so. I mean, I think it's the fumbling / small back thing because, again, like where people want to get excited about upside, right? Especially like because you mentioned like in the beginning, like half jokingly that it's the fantasy football show, but like actually, people want to get excited about RB1s in the NFL. They want to get excited about big plays. They want to get excited about high-volume opportunities for players. And this is a guy that's not going to be a high-volume kid. I mean, like, he's going to be a 100 to 150 rush a year type of guy on the high end more than likely. Like, he's never going to be a 250 carry guy in the NFL. He's just never going to be that. But he can be 100 to 150 rushes and another like 30 to 50 catches. Like, he could be that type of guy, right? Which is valuable in the NFL level. But again, people are going to underrate that because nobody cares about the running back 2 in a room. They all want to talk about the RB1 in the room. And I just think that Deontae Clayborn's a little bit limited of being the former or the latter in that conversation, but he does have absolutely a significant role in the NFL.
To jump in on a guy that you and I are going to have, we have significant differences on our opinions of. Mm-hmm. I would like to be very clear first before we start this discussion with Jonah Coleman. I have the same grade for Jadarian Price, Mike Washington, Emmett Johnson, and Jonah Coleman. Mm-hmm. I have identical grades. I think that they all have similar projections. I think that we'll get to Mike Washington. I think Mike Washington has the most potential of the group. Jonah Coleman, I have a lot of concerns about the general lack of success in production, and I also am not a fan of his vision. I feel like, for whatever reason, Jonah Coleman doesn't truly understand what he is and tries to bounce runs outside when he shouldn't be. It feels like he's a bit panicked and tries to just bounce a play outside to see what he can pick up. When he is this bowling ball, physical, get underneath your pads runner that could bulldoze people and could really, really be awesome between the tackles. I would love to know why you're so much in such a different perspective and where you see him being RB2 in this class and what you see his ceiling is.
Because I guess I just like the vision more than you do, first and foremost. Do I think he bounces at times? Yeah, I think he bounces at times. I also think the Washington offensive line is kind of ass, right? So, like, there's just
Fair.
a needed opportunity to bounce at times. You know what he reminds me of, Joe? And they're not the same players, they're different styles. Because I was just looking before we got off, and Jonah Coleman was sub 5'9", and he's 222 pounds or something like that. And he did 22 reps on the bench. And so he's a thick back, right? Like, he's a short, very stocky back. So he's not the same type of body type and player as a Kyren Williams was coming out of Notre Dame. But I think there is a similar parallel in the sense of sometimes we just can't adequately measure the physicality and dog in someone as a runner. And I think that Jonah Coleman just has that, man. Like, he runs so hard, vicious through contact. And also, like, when you listen to him talk, it's like that guy is a supremely confident player that probably is used to punching above his weight class. Like, he's used to it, man. And he also is 220 plus pounds. So, like, he's not a small guy. Like, he's just short, ultimately, right? So he has power, he has explosiveness, because I thought from 2024, which I liked but didn't love his film, I thought he was much more explosive this year before he got injured. Like, much more explosive early in the season. So I am betting on that explosiveness and that power combination and that contact balance. I think everything is there. And he's also good in the passing game. Like, he has soft hands in the backfield, out of the backfield, and he's a pass blocker too. Like, I understand that he's not going to rip off as many home runs as a Jeremiyah Love, obviously, as a Jadarian Price, and a couple of these other guys, a Deontae Clayborn, but I think he is going to consistently hit singles and doubles and the occasional triple. Like, I'm just bought into a man. Like, he gives me David Montgomery vibes, although, again, a bit of different body type, Kyren Williams vibes, where you look at him and say, not a dynamic athlete, there's obviously limitations, but the guys just produce because he just has that incredible effort as a runner, that low center of gravity. I still really like Jonah Coleman a lot. But that being said, though, Joe, we do need to talk about the chasm that goes from RB1 to everyone else. When I say I love Jonah Coleman, I am firmly Jonah Coleman on day 2, but there is no running back that I would comfortably draft top 50 outside of Jeremiyah Love, who I would draft in the top 10. Like, there is a big differentiation between running back 1 and running back 2, whoever has who in this class.
Yeah, for the vast majority, a lot of these guys that are in this tier 2 bucket of Washington, Price, Johnson, and Coleman. And I'd throw Claiborne in there as a hoverer, potentially. Those guys are most likely high-end RB2s with the upside to be solid RB1s, except for Mike Washington, which we'll get to in a second from my perspective. My only problem with what you just said about Jonah Coleman and you talking about we can't quantify the hard running style.
Yes.
Yet you've given me such a hard time about why I loved Kyle Monangai, and Kyle Monangai has worked already early on in his career with the Bears. He's not going to be their number 1 running back for his entire career. He's probably going to be a really good RB2, and that was what I saw for him. I think that there's similarities in the fact that they run super hard. I think that Monangai had better vision. I also push back without even hearing you talk about him on where you put Emmett Johnson, because I think Emmett Johnson, for a lighter player, runs incredibly hard. But the big difference here with Emmett Johnson, who doesn't have a top gear, who isn't a high-end speed guy, has better vision than Jonah Coleman. I feel like Emmett Johnson is a Monangai, Bucky Irving, Kyren Williams type of a prospect in this year's class. Will not run a good 40, but he is going to beat you with his quickness. He is going to beat you with his willing to power through contact and having good contact balance. And I think overall, if there's one player that, again, not named Jeremiyah Love, that we would classify as having the best vision, I think that Emmett Johnson would lead that discussion. I think that that's where he makes up for it and could end up being the last guy picked of this group that goes on to have the most success if he ends up in the right system.
I don't disagree that he has good vision. I don't disagree with that at all, actually. Joe, he's 200 to 205 pounds, who's a pure inside runner that I don't think plays with a great lean as a runner. I think he's got a little bit of an upright style, and I think that limits his power, and I don't think he has true explosiveness. I think he's quicker than fast, and I mean, I think he ran like 4.56 at the combine. Like, that's about what he plays at on film, in my opinion. Like, I don't know, dude. I feel like I would rather bet on the 220-pound guy that maybe we need to like inject a little bit more patience, hopefully behind a better offensive lineman, than a 200 to 205-pound power runner, inside runner that I think has below average power and below average speed. Like, I don't know, man. I never saw it. And you remember like our discourse on Kyle Monangai, who was also about 205 pounds. I liked Kyle Monangai. I remember I just used to tell you, like, he's going to go lower than you think, though. Like, he's going to go lower than you think. Like, that was always my pushback on Kyle Monangai. Not that I thought he wasn't going to be a useful running back in the NFL. I am actually, like, it's funny because he's running back 6 on my board. So most people would be like, well, you clearly like him a little bit. Well, again, I think it speaks more to that day 3 chasm of running backs than it does actually to me loving Emmett Johnson as a football player. I like some parts of Emmett Johnson, but I do think that his lack of physicality and his lack of speed together is going to limit him a ton, as like he's at best a solid RB2 in my opinion, like at best. So I do not like Emmett Johnson. I do not like him much as a player, to be honest with you. Very negative, I know.
Jadarian Price, shockingly, you are not as high on. I like Jadarian Price for what he is. I think that it's been a little perplexing for the commentary to be that Jadarian Price can step into the NFL and become a team's lead running back and be this high impact, high volume player. I don't really see that. I see a really good football player, a really good running back, but I feel like his role is translatable from what he just did at Notre Dame. But in a much large, with a lot more touches. I think that at Notre Dame, being the second player to Jeremiyah Love with the juice and the elusiveness to pick up big plays was not a crazy long speed guy. Ran the 4.5s, which was a bit unexpected. But having that explosive cutting ability is what made him dangerous as an RB2. I think that, to me, he actually does make a lot of sense going to Seattle. Not the first round. But if he was the second running back alongside Zach Charbonnet, like that is a perfect situation for him. But if I'm selecting him with a hope that he becomes a premier running back that gets a lot of touches and consistently exceeds, let's say, 1,100 yards, I don't feel like that's in there for him. But I really like Jadarian Price. I think that if we acknowledge the translation from what he did at Notre Dame to the NFL, then we see the vision for him being a really, really solid player that goes somewhere end of the second round, early in the third round, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, Price ran 4.49 at the combine, and I think that he plays faster than that. Like I think we were talking about it. I said I thought he was going to run like 4.41, 4.42, somewhere in that ballpark, and could go a little bit even faster. Like he's got legit home run speed on film. You know what's weird, Joe, is that like in a vacuum, I think that I appreciate, and I think you just said it pretty well. Like I appreciate Jadarian Price for what he is. I just think, unfortunately, some outside people are trying to make him more than what he actually is. Right? Like I've seen from two different people and high end people. I'm not talking about like just average folks on draft Twitter or whatever. I'm talking about like people that people consider experts having Jadarian Price number 32 to Seattle. And you mentioned that briefly. Like, this is not a first-round player. Like, he's just not a first-round player. And I don't think he'll ever be quantitatively a first-round player during his NFL career because there are severe limitations with Jadarian Price's game. You love him because he's explosive as hell and he runs hard and he's fast. All those three things together, awesome. If you want to find a one-cut system that fits him, I think that he has a very clean place in a room for an NFL team. But Joe, my biggest thing here is that we're combining a player with almost no proven production in the passing game, zero proven production in the passing game, a below-average pass blocker, and he had a fumbling issue this year too, where he had 3 fumbles and like 100 carries or something like that. Like, we're talking about a guy that has clear holes in his game, clear limitations, and we're talking about him potentially being a top 32 pick. Why are we doing that? We should be the honest truth should be about Jadarian Price is that dude is a really fun, useful committee back on day 2 that brings home run speed to the table. That is awesome. That is what Jadarian Price is. I think Jadarian Price will break off a lot of long runs in the NFL. But if you are setting him up to being one of the top 10 running backs in the NFL, I think you're going to be really disappointed with what the positive aspects of his game are. So, good player, explosive, long speed, but if we're drafting him to be an RB1 in the room without question and be a perennial 1,200 plus yard a year back as a rusher, I think you're going to be very disappointed with Jadarian Price. Good player, not what some people are billing him as in this class, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're willing to take a running back at the end of the first round, very early second round, you have to be expecting that guy is going to be a top 10 running back in the NFL. Plain and simple. You can't draft a running back with the thought of, yeah, he's pretty good. We like him, but we're going to take him earlier because we don't want to miss out on him. That is going to cook you as a franchise because of the variance of what you could get for a Jadarian Price and then what you can end up finding with a Deontae Clayborn a little bit later on. So I think that is a key piece with this year is that we like Jadarian Price as a football player, but there's been a bit of a misdescription on what he becomes in the NFL. Now, the last guy that I want to bring up here before we give a quick little shout out to Jeremiyah Love, as we alluded to at the beginning, I do think that this guy has the potential to at least become a top 12 running back in the NFL, and that is Mike Washington Jr. He has the goods for me in terms of his explosiveness. He has the goods for me in terms of his power. I love not only his hard running style, but his ability to power through contact. I know that you will not agree with me on this, but I saw the ability for him to separate. Did he get caught from time to time? He's a 220-pound running back. He ran in the 4.3s. I think that expecting him to fully, completely break away and to never get caught, I think that would be wrong to assume that he'd be capable of that. I think it's more telling and dangerous with the amount of long runs on film that he does end up producing. He's also super smooth for a guy of his size.
Yep.
I overall am bought into who he is as a player and as an athlete. And I feel like there is a translatable path for him, maybe even early on, to becoming a really productive player as a rookie. And I know that the reason why we're already disagreeing here on him is that I loved Damarian Hampton last year. You did not.
I did not.
We are here doing the same bit with Mike Washington, who are to a degree somewhat similar players and are probably going to he's probably going to end up in a similar type of a situation for a team that is a downhill run first offense looking for a guy that can be their lead back.
You know what's funny is I think I actually like Mike Washington more than I like Damarian Hampton. I was probably around the same when I'm really thinking about it. Kind of like, because
yeah,
I was lower on Damarian Hampton compared to some, but like I wasn't like, you can't draft this player. It was like, I was just more like day 2 of Damarian Hampton than late first round of Damarian Hampton. Like that was the difference, right? Joe, you know what's funny is like I think we appreciate Mike Washington in a very similar bucket. You have him at running back 2, I'm at running back 3. I don't think there's a ton of separation here. The difference, this is the difference, is that I just continue to push back on when people say elite speed. Guys, he may have run 4.33 at the combine, but if you're a true 4.33 runner on the field, you don't get caught. Jeremiyah Love ran 4.36, Joe. How many times did he get caught? And you're telling me this guy that runs faster than Jeremiyah Love is consistently getting caught from behind, has elite speed. I just don't agree. I just don't agree that is his game. His game is 225 plus pounds, physical, explosive, can consistently hit singles and doubles and will hit the triple. Like, he can do all that stuff. I like Mike Washington, who has a great background from Buffalo to New Mexico State to Arkansas. I like him a lot as a football player. He is a high-end RB2, potentially a low-end RB1 during the course of his career. I like Mike Washington. I just disagree that he has elite speed on film. I don't think he has elite speed on film. I think it's solid to good speed for his size on film, but I think the explosiveness is what I love about his game. He gets the top gear in a hurry. I think he has good vision. I think he's more creative for a bigger back than you would expect. Like Mike Washington, I will just continue to push back on the fact that, he is elite 4.33 speed. Maybe timed-wise, but on field, I see him get caught a lot for a guy that's supposedly a 4.3 athlete.
I think what you're missing here, though, Ryan, is that speed does not always just equate to separation and running away from people. I think that he runs a 4.3 because that he is a player that towards the back end of that 40 stretch is when he's starting to pick up a lot of his speed, and like where he was able to finish there. But where I think that he is the most dangerous, where the 4.3 to me comes into play. Actually, wait, let me rephrase what I just said. Let me backtrack for a second here. Yep. I think that he generates a lot of his speed out of the gates. I think that he is incredibly explosive. I think that he's got a ton of juice, and that makes him really dangerous between tackles because that speed, that acceleration that he's generating is coming through your chest. That is who he is as a player. He is going to hit you like a hammer before you're able to be prepared to tackle him. And I think that that's what made him really dangerous this past year at Arkansas. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that speed is picked up at the beginning, and towards the back end of that, a long run for him, he isn't really accelerated to a degree much more because he's a heavier running back.
Right.
I see the value in being able to turn to him and to rely on him on early downs to turn a 3-yard gain into a 6 or a 7-yard gain, to maybe turn a 7-yard gain into a 20-yard gain. I don't need him to be a player that constantly is a home run threat. He's not Jeremiyah Love. I don't need him to, I don't want him to be Jeremiyah Love. I want him to be capable of enduring a lot of contact and to be able to take a lot of carries and to be able to grind out teams and to use that speed earlier in plays rather on the back end. I guess that's kind of where you and I see it differently because I saw the speed, but I recognized that he was getting caught. I absolutely recognize that he's getting caught. I think to just bucket him and go, oh, he's got elite long speed like some people were doing and then just checking the box and then moving on and disregarding the film, that was lazy and stupid. But I think that there is a way that athleticism shows up in his game why I'm more bought in.
Yeah, no, I think that's the differentiation, though, that I'm talking about is I agree that he has near or potentially elite acceleration. I think the acceleration is good for the initial burst out of his stance, the initial explosiveness as a ball carrier. I just don't agree with the long speed being elite. Like, that's the differentiation of the conversation. My last question before we get to the quick ode to Jeremiyah Love is every year, Joe, the fun conversation is, who is the day 3 running back that you would pound the table for that's going to play better than his... You don't think there's anybody in this class that you're like, because I remember like a couple from the past. A couple of them in the past are James Robinson was someone I liked out of Illinois State who had some early success. Khalil Herbert was one guy. And then last year, I liked Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So like those are a couple of like the day 3 values that I thought of like that guy might not go top 100, but in the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, I think he could still play a role in a room potentially for the shorts or potentially long term. There's nobody in this class that fits that description. Not a single one.
Considering I have a 3rd-round grade on Deontae Clayborn, that would have been the only answer I would have provided.
But he might go day 3 though, so he might still count.
But if we're talking about grade, no, my answer to you is just no. I don't want to stamp any of these guys. No, I'm not putting my name on the line for any of these. No, absolutely not. You can go ahead. I am not. I don't like any of these day 3 running backs.
I will. I will throw my day 3 nod to Kalen Black from Indiana. I will throw my day 3 nod to him. I think that he is just a very useful player, man. Runs low center of gravity, physical, second effort rush. He does a lot of the dirty work, which I appreciate. So Kalen Black would be my guy in like the 5th, 6th to 7th round that I would say probably outplays his value early on in his NFL career. Kalen Black.
All right, Jeremiyah Love. We both are huge fans of Jeremiyah Love. This is a premier player in the class. He is tied for the highest graded player in the class for me with Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese. He is going to be an elite player in the NFL. He is going to be the type of a guy that takes your team over the top, that could be in the conversation for top 5 running back in the next few years. To just keep it simple, Jeremiyah Love is a rare prospect at running back, and he's incredibly well-rounded. There is justification, and I'm glad that no one's been stupid enough to try and downplay his talent, at least that I haven't seen. But Jeremiyah Love is a tremendous, amazing football player, and I'm excited to see what he does in his career.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy evaluation at this point, man. Like I would agree. I think most people haven't overthought him in the draft space for the most part, the draft Twitter space, and I think most teams around the NFL have very high grades on Jeremiyah Love. I think a lot of people are going to consider him a top 2 to 3 player in this class. Like I think teams think that highly of the 212 to 215 pound back that runs 4.36 that has game breaking speed. the only question that we have now is how high does he go? Does he definitely go top 5 or does he go 7 to the Washington Commanders? We will see ultimately what that next step in his career is, Joe. But I think the fact that, and people miss this because people have been talking a lot about like compared to Saquon and Bijan Robinson and Ashton Genty last year, like where does Jeremiyah Love rank amongst the best running backs in the last 10 plus years? And a lot of people are like, oh, he's not as good as Bijan and he's not as good as this guy. And the point of the matter is, though, the fact that he's even being brought up into that conversation speaks to how good he is. Like, I did have a higher grade on Bijan Robinson, admittedly, than I do on Jeremiyah Love. I do, but he's there, though. Like, he's in the conversation, which speaks to the fact that this is one of the better running back prospects to come out in a very long time. He's a special player without question.
Folks, comment below your favorite running back in this year's class. Hit the subscribe button and the like button on this video. We'll talk to you later.